Now, for more reaction on this, I'm joined by Zolani Mkiva from Contralesa. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time as tributes continue to stream in after the passing of King Goodwill Zwelithini. As the traditional leaders' house, what is your reaction to the news of this passing?
Well, this is indeed sad news and devastating bad news on this morning. We are really devastated with this untimely passing of His Majesty. This is so unexpected. To lose one of the giants of the institution of traditional leadership in the country as well as the continent and possibly the world over. King Goodwill Zwelithini, as we know him, was an exemplary servant leader who led from the front, who was an ocean of wisdom, not only to the Zulu nation, but to the entire South African and the African nation at large. We looked up to him. He carried the flag of royalty in the world, and he was an embodiment of integrity, credibility, and legitimacy of the institution of traditional leadership. He really represented the spirit of those kings that were there when we fought the wars of dispossession and the wars of resistance. He was a custodian and a doyen of our heritage and culture, a great motivator and supporter of the Congress of Traditional Leadership in this country. We always looked up to him, and we have lost one of a kind, and he will be remembered as someone who was down to earth, who understood that in Africa we do not have subjects, but we have people, and traditional leaders and kings in the African context are themselves servants of the people. He understood that the institution of traditional leadership and royalty was an organ and is an organ of people's power, and that is why at all material times that he wanted us to be part and parcel of the mainstream leadership in terms of the management of the national question. When it comes to matters of the land question, the king always asked us to employ both wisdom and intelligence in tackling those matters. So we will really miss him, and we want to take this opportunity to convey our sincere condolences to the Zulu royal family, the Zulu nation, and the people of South Africa, and the African masses at large.
You say that he was a big supporter of the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, and you mentioned the land question. We know that as Contralesa, you were over the years consistently backing the Zulu King on issues like the Ingonyama Trust. Talk to us about the sort of confidence you had in the King. I mean, at the time you said that the trust cannot be repealed or reviewed without the Zulu King's consent.
The position of His Majesty King Goodwill Zwelithini on the land question, we shared it because he stood for the right position, which was that of the restoration of the land to the African majority. And therefore, even when we looked into the issue of the Ingonyama Trust, it was in that context that the majority of the land in South Africa remains squarely in the hands of the people of a European origin. And we are saying that it cannot be right because we understand the history and the context on how that land was dispossessed from us, and the position that we uphold is informed by that, and His Majesty shared our view and our policy perspective in this regard, and therefore, and on a number of other many issues, we agreed with him. And in fact, I don't remember a single point where he differed with the Congress of Traditional Leadership in terms of its approach on policy matters or as well as the national question.
In terms of the King's approach to many aspects and many factors that you speak to, what do you think stood out? I mean, you call him a giant of traditional leadership, but when it comes to his leadership and the manner in which he conducted his affairs, what do you think stands out in the history books and that will be remembered about King Goodwill Zwelithini?
Well, King Goodwill Zwelithini is the custodian of our heritage and culture, primarily, which is the role of traditional leaders. And he led from the front insofar as that is concerned. You will understand that it's a formidable series of events that ensure that our culture is promoted, preserved, as well as protected. So from that perspective, he played that role, and you will see what he has done with the reed dance ceremony, which has become one of the biggest events and ceremonies under the sun and above the surface in the entire world. It attracts people from the four quarters of the globe, and they come all the time on a yearly basis to our shores in South Africa, particularly in Zululand, to come and see a spectra which is phenomenal. And he has personally built. Over and above that, His Majesty stood, at the right and at the center of, not at the right, at the center of mainstreaming the institution of traditional leadership in terms of how he carried himself. As I say, he was an exemplary leader, and because in terms of how he conducted himself, he carried a lot of dignity, a lot of aura, a lot of credibility, a lot of integrity and legitimacy, because he was very respectful, and he was seen, therefore, as a people's leader from that perspective, because he ensured that he mainstreamed our Africanity. He was not shy of the African costumes, because he understood that even those costumes speak volumes in terms.
Right, we do appear to have sound issues there, but let's go back. You were talking about how he was not afraid to wear his isiZulu attire because it represented something significant.
Definitely, it represented the significance of our DNA as a people, and he wanted to ensure that such issues, much as they are not necessarily contentious, but they play a significant role in what we call the soft power, because we cannot afford to lose that which is part and parcel of our social fabric as well as our DNA. So he has secured, actually, our outlook and our makeup as a people, that even by year 3000, we are guaranteed that some of our cultural nuances as well as antiquities will still be there, because of the role that he played. So he was a champion of the African culture from that perspective. And he was an inspiring leader. He inspired many cultural communities in the African continent and even in the diaspora. That is why he is known personally all over the world, because he led from the front.
You speak about a champion of African culture, an inspiring leader, one leader seen as a people's leader. But we know that there were some controversies during his term as leader. We know that, for instance, in 2012, he was speaking at an event where he was commemorating the anniversary of the Battle of Isandlwana, and speaking about his same-sex relations, saying that they were rotten. What do you think, out of such a leader, was learned when he then came back and showed his leadership qualities for the backlash that he received for that statement? What did it say about his character and his style of leadership?
Well, His Majesty King Zwelithini was not shy to air his views. He always articulated his views, clearly making a contribution in the national discourse and the national dialogue. And we appreciated that, because we need leaders like that who are not shy to say what they think. But he did not only put, bullet points. he substantiated every time that he put a view across, and he always wanted to win people over. And therefore, we respect him for that. We want leaders like that who are open to ideas, who are open to be convinced, but who are also not shy to lead from the front and put their position across to try and convince others. Because in even what he said then, it was in the context of him articulating the values of Ubuntu as well as the norms that are espoused in the doctrines of Ubuntu. So, I mean, he was human, and therefore he wanted to convince other people through logic. And I think he was an intelligent leader, an intelligent leader who was an ocean of wisdom, as I have indicated. So we will respect him for that, and we will remember him for all the good things that he stands for.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing your memories and experiences. That was Zolani Mkiva from Contralesa.